and welcome back to the Sally Paradise YouTube channel, where I talk about books and other things that I feel like talking about because it is not about what you know, but how you feel about what you know. Today I'm going to be diving back into the Beatnik 101 series and talking about one of the most controversial figures of the Beat generation, which is quite an accomplishment to say given some of the characters. I mean, they're real people, but they definitely feel like characters at this point, which is the super fun part about all of this. So, Allen Ginsberg. He is one of the original four, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to the beginning of the series and do a little catch up, and I would also advise you watch some of the other videos because you'll learn some fun little tidbits about his relationships to the other original four members. Where to start with Allen Ginsberg? When you hear his name, you probably think either Howl or you think of NAMBLA, and we will definitely be getting into both of those things, but on that note, I would like to preface this video by saying that while I'm an admirer of some of what the Beats stood for during their time and how it evolved into today, I am by no means a die-hard lover of all and everything they did and stood for and said. I'm really just here to study them, study their impact on America, and also observe them as the last great generation of American writers. It's incredibly difficult to boil down Allen Ginsberg, but we're going to do our best, and we're going to do that by going back to somewhat of the beginning. There is a professor and author called John Titel, and he is the author of a book called Naked Angels, which was for me the really last piece of the puzzle in order to create this video and to really gain a better understanding of Allen Ginsberg. So he has this thing that he calls the psychic wound, and the psychic wound is the void or the hurt place that the Beat artists not just created from, but spent most of their lives discovering, sticking their fingers into that kind of fleshy, fragile place and saying, what is it that makes me this way? What is this psychology that's stuck in my brain? And that is the psychic wound. Allen Ginsberg's psychic wound was his mother, Naomi, who was a diagnosed and hospitalized schizophrenic. This was extremely difficult for Allen Ginsberg to grow up with. She had political and kind of communist delusions, like the president was spying on her, and Ginsberg would definitely carry around the pain of seeing his mother this way, having to put her into the institutions himself as well. It was a heavy burden he carried and a question that he pondered for the remainder of his life. It also created a pattern and a curiosity for him, and that was psychiatric institutes and what it was that made a person crazy. So when he was at Columbia University, which is also where the big boom happened with Jack Kerouac, Lucien Carr, and William S. Burroughs, he was also institutionalized himself. So he got into this weird car accident thing where I think it was like a hit and run style thing, and he was about to go to prison, but his professors, who loved him so much and thought he was a really bright student and had a bright future, they actually recommended that he go to a psychiatric institute instead. And this psychiatric institute is where he met a figure called Carl Solomon, who honestly is a deeply interesting character, and I feel like he should have his own video. Titel says that they all called him the lunatic saint, which is such a fun little piece of information, and it's really why I would recommend reading Naked Angels. Carl Solomon is actually whom Howl is dedicated to. So Howl is the poem that was heard around the world. It was this anthem-like poem for the Beats, but also for this generation of free thinkers, outcasts, and psychically wounded people. And we're talking about people who were for equal rights, who were anti-war, anti-toxic masculinity, anti-violence, and they were really for free thinking and tolerance. This is one of the themes in Allen Ginsberg's life that I believe became wildly misconstrued and ultimately left a stain on his legacy and his career. We're gonna get back to that. At this point, you can see that Ginsberg really blossomed from this community. He thrived in it. He was somewhat of a spokesperson for them, and it's one of the misconceptions that he was actually a literary agent himself, but he wasn't. He was, to his core, a poet, and he wanted to get published just as much as he wanted his friends to get published, and he definitely did make certain connections. And then later on in his life, he was a beat generator kind of person. You know, he continued to spread the word. He continued to fight censorship with Barney Rossett from Grove Atlantic, get the word out there. And even though he definitely was like kind of a front-facing person of the generation, he wasn't a business person, he was still an artist. Ginsberg lived a very full, productive life as a member of the Beat Generation, as a poet, as a teacher, as a speaker, and I'm just going to kind of go down and bullet some of the things that he did that I thought were interesting because there's so much to get into. He studied Buddhism. He actually went to India to do that. He helped to start Naropa University in Colorado. He continued to do his reading, and he was also in a relationship with Peter Orlovsky. I wrote it down, from the 1950s until his death in 1997. He spent a good amount of his life fighting for his way of life, his ideas, his friends' ideas, this way of thinking, and he deeply believed that these ideas would be ideas that further generations needed to fight the corrupt governments of the world and to fight societal norms that actually just prohibited people from living fully. Now let's talk about NAMBLA. NAMBLA stands for the North American Man-Boy Love. It's a pedophilia organization, and it's pretty well known because of how insane it is. Ginsberg basically says that, and I have the exact quote here because I didn't want to get this wrong, he said that he was a member and donated to them in defense of free speech. He said, attacks on NAMBLA stink of politics, witch hunting for profit, humorlessness, vanity, anger, and ignorance. I'm a member of NAMBLA because I love boys too. Everybody does, who has a little humanity. I'm really not sure what that means, if I'm being totally honest. I just know that I personally have a problem with that. It's very difficult to read things by Allen Ginsberg or read about him when you know that piece of information, but it's absolutely imperative that you know that piece of information about an author or an artist when studying their work, because knowledge is power. It's a weird thing to talk about, and it's a weird place to end on, honestly, but I'm not really sure I have much left to say about Allen Ginsberg. I'm disappointed. It was probably one of the most rattling and disappointing discoveries about the Beat Generation, and I thought at first it was just, just slander. I thought that people were attacking him for being gay or attacking him for being a free thinker, but when you dig into it, it's kind of, the proof is in the pudding. Proof is in the pudding. Again, such a weird place to end on. Very interesting though, and I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you're interested in learning more about what NAMBLA is, there is a movie called Chicken Hawk, Men Who Love Boys, and I found that from a Vice article that talked about where NAMBLA was today. I haven't watched it yet, so I can't really say that I would recommend watching it, but I just wanted to share it with people who are absolutely baffled by this piece of information. I am too, trust me. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon with another video about the Beat Generation. I swear there's a lot more positive things to talk about and how they affected future generations for the better. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.